Have you defined tech debt in your org but are still experiencing ongoing customer quality issues? Do you struggle to balance prioritization of maintaining the application with the pumping out of new features? Is there still confusion as to what capacity is needed to maintain the app and the trade-offs and risks associated with deferring this work? This video is part 2 of a 2-part series on strategies to maintain overall app health. In part 1, we focused on tech debt, its definition, and how to think about managing your tech debt backlog. Tech debt is only one of multiple buckets of work that make up the percentage of Eng capacity that is aligned to maintaining overall app health. It's helpful to think of application health work holistically in order to align on definitions that help drive common understanding of what's needed to be done to keep the app healthy and why. This understanding forms the foundation for appropriate prioritization conversation with product management stakeholders so that this work is actually addressed on an ongoing basis. What are these items that are part of overall app health but are not tech debt? Well, the examples are exactly as previously described in part 1 in this series in describing what is not tech debt, including refactoring complex areas of the code, addressing emerging security threats, fixing production bugs, addressing problems identified in incident postmortems, or performing critical currency upgrades. Some of these items are difficult to plan for, but should have an ongoing amount of capacity reserved for them. For example, security threats and problems out of incident postmortems we know will happen. We just don't know exactly how much and when. We can, however, reserve capacity based on past trends and make that capacity available for other work when it's not needed for maintenance. In order to avoid conflating terms as you bring together an application health portfolio of work, it's helpful to classify items in your backlog to avoid confusion. Ideally, stories associated with this work are tagged, for example, emerging security, refactoring, production defects, and then are associated with a larger macro level bucket of work like overall application health. Managing and naming this work goes a long way to establishing a common understanding of the baseline need and benefits, and transparency helps establish ongoing trust between the stakeholders. Organizing the data also enables operational analysis to focus efforts on what is most important at the time. Say, for example, that the amount of time fixing high-priority problems out of incidents is up 30% after a string of post-release issues. Well, it's time to look deeply at the full CI/CD pipeline, all testing practices, rollout practices in order to get to the chronic root causes before safely reestablishing higher deployment frequencies. Sadly, the lack of a classification system is not the only reason companies struggle to allocate the appropriate capacity to overall application health. In many, especially larger orgs, the common problem is that ongoing health work just continually drops off the priority list and is chronically deferred in favor of shiny new features. Well, until disaster strikes, think a major outage, or disaster strikes more slowly in gradually increasing post-release issues and customer impacting incidents over time. These slow-moving train wrecks of poor quality can be very problematic as there's no smoking gun, and/or the cause, which is usually ongoing app health neglect, can't be perfectly correlated in time with poor quality outcomes or one single poor decision. The risk is that product and/or business stakeholders begin to point fingers at poor engineering practices, and engineers point back that they are a feature factory and never given the time to maintain the app properly or draw down tech debt. There's no winning this argument on either side. And equally troubling, often after one major incident is addressed, it is looked at as an isolated incident as opposed to a systemic lack of ongoing quality engineering practices. All of that sounds pretty discouraging, so let's look at what is different when app health management goes well. As previously described, creating common definitions and using those definitions to classify work on an ongoing basis is the foundation. Next, engineering needs to take the time to explain the buckets of work to product so that they understand what the work is and how it ties to customer and therefore business outcomes that everyone should care about. And last but definitely not least, product and engineering stakeholders should have 100% shared objectives, including objectives that relate to app health. Common metrics to share include application SLAs or uptime, as well as DORA quality proxy metrics such as mean time to restore or change failure rate. When engineering and product share 100% of these key quality outcomes, it helps drive accountability and a more balanced ongoing prioritization of application health. One additional question we often hear is, can maintenance items move into the tech debt backlog or bucket? The answer is it depends, but remember again the definition of tech debt. The work is tech debt if and only if you made a conscious decision to defer it. for usually a business emergency or imperative, or because you were unsure if the product would have adequate market traction to justify the work. Then something like production defects can be considered tech debt. But if you did not decide consciously to defer the work, then you are simply guilty of sloppy or suboptimal engineering management, i.e., not being a good steward of the application's health on an ongoing basis, as good engineering leaders strive to be. Although the practices outlined in this video and part 1 are straightforward, we work with many teams who struggle to keep ahead of managing their overall application health and tech debt backlog. Basic hygiene, including common understanding of the work, ongoing discipline and classification, as well as reporting and analysis, coupled with aligned product and engineering objectives, all go a long way to improving overall app health. We work with many clients to improve their ability to drive ongoing efficient quality. Call us and we can help.